So at the end of every year, you start seeing these lists, like the critics tell you the best movies of the year, the worst movie of the year. Um, Time Magazine comes out with the person of the year. Me, I guess it's a strange tradition. I always like to pick the punchline of the year, the joke that sort of sums up how I feel about the year. And then I walk around all December sort of mumbling the punchline to myself every time something goes bad. And unless it's a good year, and then I mumble the punchline every time something goes good. So I'm going to tell you the joke that sums up 2018 for me. And since I didn't get around to posting last year's joke, I'm going to tell you 2017's joke also. And I'll show you the difference between the two punchlines and how this works. So the joke for 2018. The woman goes into the funeral home and she's all upset. She says, "Look, I know the showing's in an hour, but I forgot to tell you my husband wanted to be buried in a blue suit. Is there any way for the showing you could switch him into a blue suit?" And he says, "Ma'am, we're showing 3 bodies here in the next hour. I don't know if I'll have time, but I'll see what I can do." She comes back an hour later and he's in a blue suit. And everybody's telling her how peaceful he looks and how great he looks. And after the 2 hours and the showing's over, she goes up to the funeral director and she says, thank you so much for putting him in a blue suit." And he said, "Well, to be truthful, ma'am, we didn't have time to change the suits, so we just switched heads." Now, it's okay if you groan at that and you don't laugh at it. That's a really hard joke to tell. It doesn't have the rhythm of a joke, that bump, 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 that coda that most jokes have, that rhythm. It just sort of ends abruptly. And I guess that's why I picked it for 2018. I picture like you're frolicking in a field and then suddenly you're falling to your death because you frolicked too close to the cliff. And in that joke, she had hope just for a minute there that everything was going to work out. And turned out it really wasn't working out for her. And that's kind of 2018 for me. So I've been walking around mumbling every time something goes wrong, and they just switched heads, something like that. Because 2018 was, for a moment there, I thought things were finally going to work out. And then they shut my gas off, and now I'll probably freeze to death by mid-January. So sometimes things just get so bad, you have to laugh. And I've always had a gallows sense of humor, and I think that gets me through life. So now I'm going to revisit the joke for 2017. It's an old joke from the 1970s, but it's one of my favorite jokes. Richard Nixon is looking out the window of the White House on a cold, snowy January day, and somebody has peed into the snow and have written, "Nixon must go." Nixon freaks out, calls in the head of the CIA, the Secret Service, the FBI, and he says, "Find out who did that." And they go away. 3 days later, the head of the FBI comes in and says, "Mr. President, I've got bad news for you, and I got really bad news for you. The bad news is we analyzed the urine, and it's the vice president's." Nixon just freaks out. He's beside himself. My own vice president doesn't want me here anymore. What could possibly be worse news than that? "Well, Mr. President, we analyzed the handwriting, and it's your wife's." Now, that joke conjures up some disturbing images, actually. And it's one of those jokes that no matter when you think things can't get worse, they get worse. Whenever you tell the universe, wow, it's only going to go up from here, things can't possibly get any worse, it gets worse. And that's how I felt about 2017. January started out pretty bad, and then February was worse than January, and then March was worse than February, and so on. So by the end of the year, I was just walking around, and the handwriting is your wife's, So that worked out. So I guess for 2019, I'm wishing you and myself happy punchlines. So, Happy New Year. And as always, it's me, Camroy, here on YouTube.